Cool. Let's do this thing. Well, cool. Well, welcome back, everyone. This is awesome. Day 4 now, right? 4. Thursday already. It's crazy how fast this week's gone since we've been doing this because it's been going full speed, it feels like. I feel like every day is like a new strategy, new day. Like being able to talk this stuff is awesome. Yesterday was incredible. I loved it. I loved hearing George. I loved hearing his feedback on some of the leadership tactics and just using some of that. I know I've had a lot of coaches and a lot of athletes as well reach out and say, hey, we're going to miss a day, or we might not be here tomorrow. We'll only be here once or twice a week. We're recording every single one of these, and they're all going to go on YouTube. So every single one of these are going to go to YouTube. We'll email those out as well once they start getting put up. I just uploaded them to the Google Drive, so we'll be able to start filtering those onto YouTube as shortly as tonight, tomorrow. So that'll be good. We'll be able to go back in there, check this out. If you ever want to go back, if you miss a day, if you're not going to be there for a few days, if you want to go back and listen to something else, they're always going to be there. So it's going to be good. Or if there's a reference point that you want to send another coach or athlete to and say, hey, check this out. You need to hear this part. Fast forward to minute 30. That'll be on there as well. Today, we're going to talk about maximizing your self-image and basically reinforcing player confidence from the coaching standpoint. Reinforcing self-image, 1, and 2, the player confidence. I think those are very big. We talk a lot about confidence. We talk about how to build it, steps to building it, different things we can do on a daily basis to build confidence and confident teams and athletes. And that's really what our role is as coaches, is to build leaders in society and to help athletes be confident in everything they do. The role that you're playing in their life is so massive and it's so vital. And no matter if you're the head of an organization, you're the third assistant or the freshman coach, like it doesn't matter what coach you are, like you play a vital role in their life and the development of them in that stage that they are in, that season that they're in, which is really cool because we've all get to plant the seeds. Talk a lot about planting the seeds, and we get to plant the seed, and hopefully along the way they find other mentors and coaches that can help make it grow. So today, maximizing self-image, I'll kick it off and then we'll get into Jake and we can go down the line again. And if anybody else has anything, throw it in the chat. Feel free to unmute, chime in, whatever you got. If something worked for you or some way that a tactic that you've used, a strategy that you've used, feel free to throw it up and chime in. We're open to anything. This isn't us talking. This is more of a conversation. So I think the biggest things for me when it comes to that self-image aspect is, 1, like understanding like how to take ownership of our career and take ownership of our results. I think from a coaching standpoint, it's more of how do we take ownership of the results and empower our athletes to take ownership of the results that they may have. And it's easier said than done. With anything, if we're in a sales role and our team doesn't do well and we fail to meet the sales quota and now our CEO's pissed, well, if you're the leader of the sales team, everybody's mad at you, right? It seems like everything falls on the leader. But guess what? If we can take ownership of the results, that's huge. I think that's step 1. How do we take ownership of our life? Who do I say I am? So as a coach, excuse me, I think that the best way to do this is to just empower them in practice. Practice is a very, very good time to be able to empower your athletes, challenge them a little bit, and encourage them to fail. We talked a lot about failure yesterday as far as, hey, how do we fail fast? How do we fail forward? How do we fail a lot so we can learn from our mistakes and it doesn't happen again? And something that at least I like to encourage my athletes that I get to work with and the times where I go out and do these camps and clinics is high speed. We're fast paced. We're not going to sit there and talk. I had a coach in college who we were in Reno. So much like some of your guys' states, they're very cold and very windy, and it's not very fun when you're standing out there for hours and not getting anything done. And our coach loved him to death, but we would have times where we would fail, and then he would call us in and we'd talk about it for 45 minutes to an hour. And we were getting nothing done. We were just wearing it in the snow and the wind, and it sucked. My hands are frozen. I got pneumonia. Like, it wasn't cool at all. And I'm missing class now because of it. But understanding, hey, if we fail, let's evaluate it, but we don't need to spend 30, 45 minutes on it. We can spend 5, 10 minutes, get to the point, be clear, concise, and communicate what it is that we want to get across to them, and then move on. So creating a practice plan, in my opinion, is something that's very high paced, something that gets them interactive and moving, where we don't have to think a ton. We actually just go. We can move around. And that creates that competition piece, whether that's defensively, offensively, maybe team D, whatever it may be, empowering them to be more upbeat, more confident. So that's just something that I wanted to add in there before we go. But the step 1 that I had down, ownership of your career, I think it's huge. And as coaches, we can empower our athletes to take that ownership right away, and that starts day 1. And so how does that look? So if somebody makes a mistake in the field, maybe the shortstop goes to the bag at the wrong time, or he goes to third base instead of second base. Calling him up after the inning, in between innings, if it's a game, and just discussing, hey, what were you thinking there? Something that a buddy of mine mentioned was, instead of asking why questions, ask what questions. That was big. Like, instead of why questions, hey, Jake, why did you take out the dishes? Or why didn't you take out the dishes? And then your wife's like, what do you mean? Like why? What about what? What was the reason why? Right? Like, what was the reason why you weren't able to do something? If we ask those what questions, I think it comes across a little smoother, a little more inclusive, and it empowers them a little more. When I get something that's why, hey, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Well, it's almost like demeaning to me in a way, and knocks my confidence or knocks my empowerment and my abilities. And then I don't want to be as open with that person. So as a coach in the leadership position, asking what questions rather than why questions is a great first step to empower ownership of our career. Jake, I'll go ahead and let you kind of take over from here, but I just wanted to add that piece in there because I think that what questions we ask is very, very crucial in developing confidence and ownership for our athletes.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts as a coach, is to help develop self-confidence and a self-image for these players that they're going to carry on long after. And, part of that might be, having played for some coaches that did not instill those things for me. I had a coach whose son went on to play in the pros. Great coach, very knowledgeable, but you played scared the entire time because any mistake that you made, you were going to get screamed at for it. So, I know what that can do to a kid's confidence. I also know how much kids value what you say. So really, you need to understand that the words that you say are either life-giving or life-taking, right? Like we get to speak life into these kids and give them confidence and give them their potential future, or we can completely tear them down, and that's going to last a lot longer, right? So it's constant reinforcement. It's, it doesn't mean you can't reprimand. You have team standards, and, they do have to adhere to those, but the way you go about it, like Austin was saying, is so important. One, to keep that relationship with the player, because you're going to need them the rest of the season and probably farther than that. But two, just to make sure that you're not killing the kid's confidence, right? I think everybody in here, we're not coaching youth baseball because we want to win. Okay, we do want to win. We're all competitive. But if you decide to coach, it's probably because you want to be an impact. You want to make an impact in somebody's life. So don't sacrifice that impact in that split second just because you react and say something that you shouldn't. One of the things that we talk to the kids about that I think is just a nice little picture. I still have it here. I drew on one of my daughter's plates because I have nothing else right here. But when we talk about this idea of self-image, what it should look like, right, is something like this. You have yourself, if this is a pie chart, and then all of the little areas are, you have your parents that play into your image. You have your friends, you have social media, you have society, you have your girlfriend or whatever that is. Okay, but what most of the time happens with our kids is it looks more like this. Okay, so it's all evenly split, or they give different amounts of their success and their image to everybody else, to where suddenly over time, they no longer control what they think success is. They no longer control what they think their image is, because it's so based on what mom and dad say and what their friends say and what they say at school, what their teachers say and what their coach says. And suddenly they're only actually like controlling equity of a small portion of their own success in their life. And we want to make sure that we empower them to control the equity of where they're going, of their success, of their life, and of their future. And the way to do that as a coach is to, have those conversations with them. You want to be an impact, but the more that they can feel like they're taking ownership of, the better the results are going to be. So as a hitting coach or a fielding coach, a lot of times, rather than, hey, that was wrong, do it this way, it's, hey, why don't you try this? Just try it for a few, see how it works. It's your career, but I'm going to give you some tips, some things to add to your toolbox that if it works for you, that's great. But every player is going to be different. It's not going to work identically for them. And one of the things with that is sometimes we have to verbally say the wrong thing for them to do the right thing. So we can't be too prideful as coaches to where our verbal cues have to be like actually correct. Like if I have to tell a kid to swing down on the ball to get his bat on plane to be level through the zone, then tell him to swing down, right? If you got to tell him to try to hit it as high as he can, obviously you don't want that, but sometimes we get so caught up in our own pride that we're afraid to give wrong cues to get right results. And I think we have to do a better job of not being afraid of that. because what it does is it empowers the athlete to have their own cues in their mind that get them to the right spots on the field when they're performing. So I think those are a couple things just real quick with that. And then from the practice planning side, just to go off of what Austin was saying, keep them moving. I think one thing that helps, intent matters. So if they're doing a drill and you've given them, hey, our intent on this 4-corner throwing drill is we're working the fast transfer. We're going as quickly as we can, getting ball from glove to hand. Well, when you're watching that, if that's the intent you gave, don't reinforce their footwork, right? Don't call them out on something negative that they did on a throw. If your intent is transfer, then the only thing that you should be reinforcing or critiquing is transfer, right? Because the more focused you are on the intent that you gave, the more focused that they can be. And it all comes back to that clear, concise communication. The clearer you are, the easier it is for them to perform because they want to please us. Our job is to give them the outline of what that looks like to do so.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you brought up the intent aspect, Jake. I think that's the biggest part about any practice plan or any sort of, even if you're working individually with somebody, like what's the intent? The intent of today. Like what's our focus for the day? What are we going to work on today specifically for you or for our team? Like what is this thing? What is it going to look like? And I think that's the biggest thing, rather than just going out there to go through the motions and to just do the same thing every day because you think it's a great practice plan. I think just putting that intent behind it really matters a lot, not only to your coaching staff, but to the athletes as well. Ronnie, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so just coming from a private session or group session setting, and I can get into performance stuff in a little bit, but I know for me, a lot of times I think the kids look for what I have to say to help their swing get better. I think the reason why we actually do well is because that's not how we teach. I give you cues and I help you with it, but at the end of the day, you have to feel it. You have to understand what you're looking for. You got to know what you want to get out of your swing as a hitter. And I have to have those hard conversations a lot of times with hitters. I can't give you what you're looking for. You have to find it within yourself on what you want to become as a hitter and what you need to work on and understand the things that you need to get better at. I can guide you and help you within that, but at the end of the day, it's your swing. It's not mine. And I have the resources in place to help you, but I can't do it for you. My time's done. And that's a conversation I have a lot of times with players. And I think that's a hard one to have, just to get them to understand that, like, they're in charge of their own swing. They're in charge of getting their glove down to the ground to field a ground ball. They're in charge as a catcher to get their glove down to block. Like, it's not my job to do that. I can give you the resources to help you with that, but understand that that's something that you have to take ownership and control of. And I think self-awareness is big into that. Understanding that if you're 5'2", you're probably not going to hit bombs. So you need to be the guy that's going to be the singles guy until you develop and get bigger. And those conversations actually matter. And then from a performance aspect, a lot of kids they're self-conscious. I notice this a lot in the performance aspect and the strength and conditioning is a lot of kids are very, very self-conscious of getting in the weight room and lifting because they look at everybody else. And if we as coaches can help those guys understand that everybody's learning at a different pace and you may just be learning how to lift as a 15-year-old, that doesn't make you wrong. It just means that our process and how we're going to teach you is going to be a little bit different than if you've been lifting for a couple years. And so instilling confidence into players is a big deal, I think, especially on a strength conditioning and performance side of things, because that's how we really hit our athletes, is making them understand that we don't really care what your baseline is, but we do want to help you reach your goals, but we need to know what your goals are to get there. Right. I think that's big. So coming from what we do in our side of things, that's mostly what I see. And we definitely try to help them in reaching their goals, but I can't do it for you. And I make sure that they know that.
I really like that. And I really, really like that. And being able to communicate with them too. Just everything, it seems like it's oversaid, but the clear communication, it clears up so many things for all of us. Even as a coach, like if I'm Ronnie, I think you said it yesterday or the day before about being transparent with the athletes, because you said if you try and cover something up, eventually it gets unsealed and somebody's going to hear that and it's going to come out. It's like when you're younger and you're trying to hide the cookies. Or no, here's a better analogy. This is my favorite one because I did this a lot. It's Christmas and I'm 13 years old and I'm creeping around, or I'm 11 years old and I'm creeping around in my parents' bedroom trying to find my presents. And I know that those presents are there and I found the presents, and now I've got to act like I'm excited when I'm out there and make sure that they don't know that I saw the presents. You're trying to cover something up the entire time. So that's just another way that I'd like to relate that to is, hey, don't reveal the presence. Like, just be real with them, be transparent, clearly communicate with them what your message is. And sometimes, like you said, Jake, maybe you got to say something different. Like, hey, try and hit this ball at the top of the cage to get the reaction or the movement that you want to see.
Real versus feel.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And Jim even put in there in the chat saying, loving the high-paced practices, but always caution the girls that we can't sacrifice proper technique and fundamentals to move faster. I think that's key. So if you are going to have a fast-paced practice, you're 100% right. Make sure that we're still getting the proper fundamentals, that we're still working efficiently within each one of those drills that we put out there for our athletes. Adam, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I think all three of you guys at some point have talked about what and how we speak to our players. I think that's a really, really important thing when it comes from a coach to a player perspective. I mean, think about everyone in here, when you were players, how the conversations between you and a coach went and what that maybe made you think of yourself. Like, we're all working with very impressionable people, and we're trying to get a lot of different points across to them. And one thing I think we need to focus on, Austin, you talked about at the beginning, is like not dwelling on the negatives. Like, I think athletes don't hear as much encouragement as maybe is what they should. Like, I was an athletic trainer before I was a baseball coach, and work with softball players as well. And I was around all different kinds of sports. I was at an athletic trainer at one of the biggest high schools in Indiana, and I was with football, basketball, baseball, softball, wrestling, all, you name it, right? And I would always just keep an eye on the interactions of the coaches between the players. And the amount of teams and coaches that I saw that were playing with this idea, coaching with this idea of fear, just kind of astounded me. And the things that they would say and the interactions that they had with their players, I could just tell it was immediately affecting how they were playing in the immediate, but then their overall self-image. And that's kind of what we're mainly talking about today. Like, we as coaches don't realize how much what we say affects an athlete's self-image. So I've seen so many times, like, coaches getting on a player necessarily. So a player makes a mistake and they immediately reprimand them from the dugout or from the sidelines, but then they don't in turn, provide a solution to that problem. And that's where Jake was talking about us as BAM fan. We don't want players playing with fear. We want them playing loose and learning to have confidence and not in fear of making mistakes. And so, like, I think as coaches, we need to not let our desires for wins above losses to affect how we speak to our athletes. I mean, we have athletes that are going to be probably the heavy hitters and the big time defensive players, the ones that are in our minds going to immediately affect the wins and losses. We need to make sure that we're not just having conversations with them, that we're not just trying to inspire them or impact them. We need to make sure we're having conversations with the people that don't have the biggest impact, the ones that don't see the lineup on a regular basis, and provide that sort of encouragement for those kids and the challenges to help them surpass the struggles that they're in and put them in spots where they can be successful, even if they aren't the ones that we call to on a day-to-day basis to go out there and win ball games in the immediate. So I challenge everybody in here to really think about the conversations that you have with your kids one-on-one, and then the conversations you have with your team overall, and think about from their perception of what the things you are saying and how that affects their self-image. I'm not saying we have to like baby everybody or that we have to coddle and that you can't be hard on people, but you have to have a purpose behind what you're saying. If you're just yelling just to yell, just so people can hear your voice, that's my least favorite thing as far as a coach. And we see that, Jake and I, when we're coaching, like I see that on the other team, I see how coaches will be so hard on a player without providing solution or without providing encouragement. And then I've had players message me on Instagram after a game that I have not even met before, but I introduced myself during the game, and they went and found my profile and saying, hey, I loved how you and the other coach were encouraging. It seemed like you guys had a passion for it. It didn't seem like it was a job. And I just think that so much, I try to think about how I'm communicating directly to the kids so that their self-image is moved in the direction that I think that is best for them, regardless of whether or not they're at the bottom of our depth chart or at the top of our depth chart. Sorry, that was long.
No, you're great.
Dude, you can go the whole time if you want. Keep going. You're on a roll, bro. I'm putting stuff in caps. When it's in caps, you know it's important, baby. Yeah,
right.
I love it. There's a couple of things that popped up in there, and then we'll get into the body language aspect of how that translates from the coaching standpoint to an athlete. We talked about the athlete's body language and how that presents a certain metaphor and persona of that athlete, but it also works from the coaching standpoint. But Adam, I love that you mentioned the fear aspect. And here's something that I wrote in caps that you sparked was you said, do not lead with fear. Like a lot of those coaches at that, when you were the trainer, were leading with fear, and the fear-based tactics don't work. Sean put it in there. Leaders who motivate through fear are concerned with their own results. That's it. Like, I'm going to show fear because I want to get my results. Hey, you better get this mile time in less than 6 minutes or else you don't get a hat. We had that in high school. It sucked. I had to get 2 miles in less than 15:30. And when you're a sophomore that eats donuts and 44-ounce Dr. Peppers after a workout, it doesn't work very well when you're trying to run 2 miles around a track in the middle of summer in Arizona. It's not very fun. But the fear-based, like, and I think fear-based tactics are the old school way of mental toughness. I think they're a little overused. I don't think there's any right time to ever use the fear-based, because if you're trying to build trust, you never lead with fear. I don't like the fear. I think instead of leading with fear, you lead with love. And that's what I want to get into here is, hey, find points throughout practice, as hard as it is, because some of us have 90 minutes, some of us have 3 hours. It depends on the practice. Some of us have only a 60-minute session or 45-minute session with our athlete, and it's a lot different. And I think the key that I want to get across is, hey, let's find points during practice to show some love to our athletes. One thing that I do is, and Tom's in here, and he, like I said, in the very first day, he does an incredible job at Marin Baseball in the Bay Area up near San Francisco. It's unbelievable what he started. It's much like Bam Fam, and it's just really fun to watch. But one thing that I try and do before every practice is walk around, even if they're on my team or not on my team, and just give them knucks. What's up, dude? What's up, dude? What's up, dude? What's up, girl? Like, how are you? How are you? How's everything going? How's your Fortnite game? Well, how was Easter? How was Christmas? What are you doing tomorrow? How's your parents? Who's got the better arm? Who's got the cooler looking glove? Who's got the new, up in that area, it's like, who's got the new mountain bike and the new New Zealand trip and all these crazy things that are going on. It's a little different demographic, but you got to pump them up. Like, find little areas and times to pump up your athletes. That goes way, way further, man, than anybody else could, like, anybody can think of. And then to lead off of that, Jeannie's amazing. She coaches out in Wairika, California, a very small town in Northern California. And she's a teacher as well. And she does, like, one of her classes just is more of the disciplinary kids, not even just athletes, but kids. But she does a great job of, one, like, implementing, hey, I'm in charge, without being the fear-based leader. Like, she shows that she's in charge, but she leads with love. And she always finds ways to encourage these kids, because when they go home, they don't have the love that she's given them. And maybe it's some tough love sometimes, because you got to still be that parent figure in their life. And it's so tough for some of these athletes and kids in general, because a lot of us in here are teachers or have kids of our own and stuff like that. But if we can just show that love, man, you never know what word you said to somebody could change their life, good or bad. You never know. But our verbiage is big time. And Jake, you mentioned the verbiage earlier. It's huge. But let's get into the body language aspect. The body language. This is fun, because body language as a coach is so key. How do you respond in failure, right? Yeah, it's so hard too. Like, oh my gosh, dude, why do you keep throwing the ball right down the middle and I'm over here? Or like, even for me, dude, like, in travel ball, it's fine because it's travel ball. But in high school, to me, it was like, it meant something more to me for some reason. I don't know why, but I was just so locked in. It's my first year, and the guys are throwing balls, and then somebody drops a pop-up, and I'm over here like, oh, and I had to check myself. I'm like, wait, every one of 9 of these guys are watching my body language and how I respond to that drop pop-up. Because if he gets another one, if they look over and see me throw my hat, throw my clipboard, slam my bat, or kick something over, or hear me yell F-bomb, well, do you think they're going to be prepared for the next fly ball? The fear and the anxiety and the worry of dropping that ball is going to triple, like 10 times as much as what it would be. So our body language as coaches is very vital. And Adam, you brought this point up in the athlete session about the body language and how it transfers into energy to other people. I think as coaches, if we're hitting in the box, and just going back to hitter style, like, I'm hitting the box to take a bad swing, I look down third base at my high school coach, and he's like, or pacing down the line. It doesn't make me feel very confident. It doesn't make me feel very good. But if he's coming at me going, it's all right, you got it, Jake. Adam, you got this. Ronnie, next pitch, right? Like, believe in yourself, clear it. Whatever verbiage you got to use, something powerful, something that empowers them to take that ownership, right? And to still believe in themselves. That is key. as a coach, and everybody's watching your body language, the fans, the parents, the other team, and you know when you've got somebody beat. You know when somebody's beat because of their body language. But as a coaching staff, we can really inspire our athletes by the way we carry ourselves. And it's just showing up on time and not being the guy or the girl who shows up with a massive dip in their mouth and is slumped over and hung over and just like not really caring. I mean, I've seen it all. That's why I decided to do camps. I was like, I don't want to do camps because it's a lot of traveling. But you know what? Now a lot of people are doing camps that actually are inspiring. They're more of just, hey, I'm an old guy that comes in here and spits a dip and yells at everyone. Well, at least from what I've seen out here, and I'm like, that's not happening anymore. We're not doing that anymore. Like, let's find a better way. So your body language is so key. They're going to totally latch on to your body language, and that energy is going to transpire into each one of your athletes. And I guarantee you get way more out of them in practice in the game, and they're going to listen to you more. If we're having trouble listening, like that is one way that you can get your athletes to listen to you a little better throughout the course of a season. Jake, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that aspect in the body language and what you guys have seen, or some tips that you've used, or some things that you've seen that have really worked for you.
Yeah, so we do sessions over specifically that, over body language, over acceptable body language versus unacceptable body language. And I think our coaches in general do a really good job at our mixed sessions of, that's probably the number one thing that our coaches reinforce or try to change the behavior of with our athletes. Because you can see in a large group, you know, when you have a lot of the kids that have great body language, you can walk in and pick out really quick the few who are not having a good day. And that is one of the few things at our practices that you can get kicked out for, is poor body language. Now, we're not going to kick a kid out just to kick them out. That would be third or fourth offense where we've had conversations with them. We've met with parents about it and things still are not progressing or changing. And then we're not going to let it affect how the whole session goes. You know, we got sessions with 100 kids in there, so we're not going to let one affect the other 99. But you don't want to lose that one either. So I think knowledge is power. And I think there's a really good question of, you know, if a kid is harder on themselves than you would be, how would you deal with that? I think that's great. And I think it falls right into this. And, you know, step one is figuring out, how do you deal with struggle, or how do you deal with failure? And there's 3 different responses that most people typically have. You have fighters who, as soon as you say something, that kid is going to justify his actions and explain why he was right. And at some point throughout that, it's no longer about what the topic was. It's a fight and they have to win it. And some of us are like that. That is a strong one for men in general. Like, most men fall into that category where we're fighters and we get in the middle of it. We got to win it. It becomes a competition. The second one is flight, right? So you have players that will do something and you try to address it, and they'll just shove it off and walk away and say, okay, whatever, and be done with it. And then you have the conceders, and those are the people who they'll sit there and they'll listen and they'll nod, but they're not hearing anything you're saying because they're still focused on what happened to them. So I think as soon as you figure out what the natural response of a player is between those 3, then it gives you that opportunity to have a conversation with that player. Like, hey, what I've noticed is whenever I try to address this as a coach and we try to move forward and push past it, this is the response I typically get. You know, what's the reason behind that? Going back to Austin's what questions, right? Like, what's the reason that you're doing that? How is that helping us progress as a team? And I think if you have, you know, that environment where that's something that you've already established, that it's okay to have conversations like that, it's at least a step in the right direction. And one of the things that struck me when Adam was talking about fear is this idea of, you know, people exchange the words fear and respect like they're synonyms, and they're very, very vastly different things. Okay. So you can demand respect, but you don't have to lead out of fear just to get respect. If they respect you as a person and know that you care about and value who they are off the field too, then they're going to give you that same respect in the way that they play and the expectations that you ask for them to adhere to and do those things. So one of the ways to do that is when you are reprimanding somebody or fixing a behavior, we call it the shit sandwich, right? So you're going to compliment them, say something really nice, then you're going to throw in the negative, the shit in the middle, and then you're going to end with, you know, but your last step out, I thought you did a really great job. You battled with 2 strikes, whatever that is. And for the kid, it gives you the opportunity to say the negative that you need to, but they also leave with double the compliments versus the negative that you said. So a lot of times they take it a lot better and they leave feeling like the relationship isn't hindered by you calling them out for what they did. So I think that's a big thing. And I think one thing that we don't often talk about is the idea that if you are not leading out of fear and you have a respectful environment that you're a part of and you're all in it together, the few times during the season, and they will come, where you do have to yell and raise your voice and get on your guys as a team and scream at them or whatever that is, they're going to respect that way more if it's only once or twice and you've already established that culture of respect than if every practice they know that you're just going to go out there and scream. It loses its luster. So I'm like a 1 or 2 time a year yeller. But when I do it, you can tell the kids are like, okay, we did something really wrong, and we're going to listen to this and make sure it doesn't happen again. So you really, one bucket throw a year. That's
one bucket throw a year.
So, yeah, I think that's big because once you've established that, then you open up opportunities for you to instill fear in moments that need them. And they're very, very small and they're very, very brief. And it's important to come back after those and have that discussion. But sometimes you do need to shock them a little bit as a team and make sure that they're not just falling into too comfortable of an environment either. So, yeah, I think everything you guys have said is spot on. The only other thing that I would say with it that I said to the players too is limits begin where your vision ends. And when we talk vision casting for players, that's personal, but as a coach, that's for your team. And one thing I would challenge you guys to do is cast that vision with and for your team and make sure that it's big enough that there's room for you to grow into it. So if you think you're going to go 500, don't set that as the vision. Like, our goal is to go 500. Try to win 60% of your games. Try to win 65, whatever that is. We want it to be attainable, but we also want it to be something that they have to stretch for. I remember, and my players still talk about it. I did not have the knowledge that I do now about like body language, this type of stuff then. But I remember I walked into Perry Meridian High School, where I'm currently coaching high school at. And day one, all the kids sat down. And for us, the county championship happens at the minor league stadium. And it's a big deal to play there. Most kids never get a chance to do that. And the first thing I told them was, get your mind right, because this year we'll be playing at Victory Field. And they thought, did we add something to the schedule? And we had the conversation about how we're going to go play in a county championship. And the expectation is that we're going to do that. And every day at practice, we're going to practice that way. And we're going to think that way. And at the end of the year, we were playing there. And it wasn't because of me. It was because these guys bought into the vision of we're going to Victory Field. And you could ask anyone and they believed it. So you have the power as a coach to really instill a good vision of where these guys can go. And your job is to really hold that power and understand that it's going to be meaningful to them, whatever you set. So don't waste that opportunity to truly set and cast a vision that you guys can grow into together. It makes the season totally different when there's a combined goal that you're working towards rather than just trying to win a game on a weekend. It's a very different feel.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that, the aspect of casting a vision, because I think that's huge. We've got to have a vision and have a mission of where we want to go. With anything individually and as a team, we got to have that mission. Talked a lot about it earlier in the week. Hey, what's our mission as a program? What's our mission? Who are we? What defines us? What's our identity? What's our why? And what's the reasons why we do things? And we've talked a lot about that with what we're doing. Like, what are the reasons why we do things? Well, we want to find a better way to bring coaches and athletes together across the world, and not just individually, and not just do it for ourselves, but do it for the rest. I think that's huge. When you have a why vision, I think that really makes things real and it brings it to life. And the shit sandwich, dude, the shit sando, that is, I don't want to go to Subway.
It works, man.
High protein, low carb.
High protein, low carb.
Does that include wheat bread or is it gluten free? Because I might have an allergen. I don't know.
Ezekiel bread.
If you're on the West Coast, it's a lettuce wrap because we're vegans over
That's
there.
right. They don't believe in carbs. That's right.
No, not in the Bay Area, I guess. On jabs now. Now I'm about to get ran off of this. Somebody's going to come out here and kick me off. But I think that's huge, man. Adam, do you want to add anything onto that? Ronnie, either of you guys?
Yeah, I got something. It's Jake said something in there. It's about the difference between fear and respect and how they're not necessarily equal. And it just started making me thinking about the respect as coaches that we have from players. And that's a big thing for me. I hear my dad always told me that, obviously you need to respect your elders, but he also made it a big deal. You understand that respect is absolutely earned regardless of what your age is. And I think as coaches, we need to remember that, we need to we want our athletes to respect us, but that has got to be 100% earned in my mind. And one thing that I try to remember is that not only is that got to be 100% earned, but it can be lost pretty quickly. And we as coaches need to be mindful of the actions that we're taking and the things that we're saying, and realize that since these athletes are impressionable, they can lose respect for us quickly, and we need to be cognizant of that and be willing to admit when we make mistakes. If it's a mistake that Jake and I always say that we'll be aggressive on the base pass. If we get you thrown out, it's on us and everything. But like, if you do something that you do regret saying, mention that to that athlete, because there's two things that would really bother me as a coach is if I taught a kid the wrong way to do something. So I'm always studying as much as I can about catching and hitting and everything. But then also if I did something to lose their respect and I was not able to gain that back. So talk about, like I said, fear does not necessarily equal respect. Like, don't think that you just get respect because you have the word coach on your title. I don't think that's a good way to go. I've seen coaches operate in that manner, and it's very evident that they aren't doing the things to earn that respect. They just assume that they have it. So work on your self-image as a coach. We are not finished products. We have to realize that just like the athletes, we have always got work to do ourselves, and we have to continue to try to not just have that respect, but continue to earn it. And, I continuously try to earn the respect of my wife. She respects me, but I've got to always make sure that I'm earning it as well. And we got to do the same things with athletes. I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback off that a little bit. The one thing that I notice a lot with a ton of coaches is just being consistent, right? Consistency in your actions. And just like we can see players' body language, they can see ours too. And so if we're having a bad day, or our kid's sick and we don't know how to get them, where they need to go, or whatever's going on in our lives, they see that. And if we show up to a practice and we're already stimulated and we're already, mad for something, we're always going to find a reason to flip out at practice. We're always going to find a reason to let that anger out. So we have to be consistent in our actions. And I think that will create more consistency in their actions too, right? So if they know that they're getting the same guy or girl every single time they show up to practice, they're going to be more consistent when they come to practice because they understand the expectation. But as soon as we start to fluctuate in the way that we act, that's going to cause chaos with your players too. So I think consistency in action is huge when it comes to developing self-image and respect from your players, like Adam mentioned, or just getting them to buy into what you're trying to do.
Yeah, you're 100% right, man. That body language is so key to anything we do, how we carry ourselves. It totally goes hand in hand with successful teams. You can tell when they walk up to the yard and you see a group of 9 that are sprinting on and off the field, that are carrying themselves with respect. They look in unison. It's not Army style, but they still are pretty organized. They run together. They're not just one guy ahead and touches the fence and the other 3 are slagging behind, and then Johnny in the back's got his shirt untucked and his belt hanging off one loop because he's not ready to play yet. That goes a long way. People are watching that, and not only coaches, but the other teams watching that. You get a sense of the energy that's created through that. And scouts are watching that. If you're a team that is involved in that, where you're looking to send kids to college or send kids to the next level, they're watching the body language of the team and of the coaches, and they get to see that. So just building relationships, I think, is huge. Being able to build that relationship with your athletes, with your squad, and then reinforcing that message consistently. Like you said, Ronnie, being consistent with your actions is the biggest thing. If you show up late, can't expect them to show up on time. If you are cursing and throwing your stuff all the time, you can't expect them not to throw their stuff and curse when they get out. If you're on time and you're demanding a lot out of them, then they're going to demand a lot out of you. And I think it works hand in hand, and it helps the best teams be great because we can now build that trust within the organization and our unit. And like we always talk about, I think trust is the biggest thing to have. If we don't trust each other, we can't do what we want to do. If I don't trust my guys to go out there and perform, then why would I put them on the mound, or why would I put them in the lineup? So I think trust, if we get back to that, just the T word, right? It might be a buzzword, it might not, but I think trust is key with anything. Relationship, Adam, you mentioned it with your wife, like showing respect, like being able to respect each other and earning that respect. Jake mentioned in the chat that culture can be destroyed in seconds. One wrong action can destroy the whole culture, and it can destroy how people view you. So even the youth coaches here, like you lose your cool on a bunch of your athletes in a practice on a Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Well, there might be 2 parents that are lurking around on a walk with their dog in the background that hear that now just spread that word to everybody else and said, wow, did you hear Coach Johnny just freak out on his athletes out. That was not the right way. I mean, here's an example. I'm in the cage a couple months ago, and the soccer team's practicing on the other field. I can't see them because there's the baseball fence in front of me, but they're on the other side of the baseball fence, and we're hitting, me and this athlete, we're getting work in and whatever, we're doing our thing. I got music on, so it's already not like it's quiet in there. And all of a sudden we just hear somebody yelling at the top of their young lungs, like awful words, like cussing at the kids, like yelling at them, demeaning them. And I'm like, all right, that's weird. Okay, whatever. That's just one instance, right? Maybe it's just a mistake. Somebody messed up. And it went on for an hour. And this soccer coach is just yelling. So now anytime I think of this high school, I'm going to leave it unnamed, but whenever I think of this high school soccer team, the men's soccer program, I automatically think of that coach that I heard. I didn't have to see him. I just heard him. And I'm not sending my kid there. I'm not recommending somebody to go there because I heard how he talks to his athletes. And that's just from overhearing. You don't even have to see the body language. You can hear the voice. So the communication piece is big. If we even shout and praise, I'm like, wow, this guy is motivating. I want to go over and meet him. I'm going to shake his hand and say, how'd you do that? I want to learn more about that. But if I hear somebody demeaning my athletes, just going from a player standpoint, that was my least favorite thing to deal with anytime a coach was. I don't care if you're hard on them. You can be hard on them, but never be demeaning to your athletes. It just loses that trust and respect. I don't know if you guys have anything to add in here. We got about 10 minutes.
You got to I hear this term a lot, like as when we're recruiting, is like finding a coach that an athlete wants to play for. Like you want to continuously give the kids reasons to want to play for you. Just because you have them and you've recruited them, maybe you got them for that 1 year, they've got options. They can go other places. So continue to find reasons for them to want to come play for you as opposed to going to play for other people. So be innovative, make your practices creative. Don't waste their time, don't lose their trust and their respect by poor actions or poor words. And, make sure you're studying and doing everything that you can to make sure that they are finding those reasons to play for you, and they feel like they're being developed. They're in a place that they can grow. They're with a person that they can trust. I mean, just because you have them then doesn't mean that you can't lose them later. So I like that term of, I would play for that guy. Okay, yeah, I play for that guy right now, but will I play for him in 2 years? What's it going to be like? We've had kids that go to we just had a recent graduating class of kids from BAM that went to be freshmen in college, and during their recruiting trips, they had coaches that convinced them that they were the type of coach that they would want to go play for. Then when they got there, they were a completely different person, and they didn't have that same feeling, and they started to feel that loss of like, I don't know if I want to play for this guy. I don't know if I want to go to this school for the next 4 years, and or if I don't know if I want to continue playing this game. That's one of my biggest fears is me as a coach being the reason that a kid would not want to play baseball. That would make me sick. So continue as coaches to find reasons to make kids want to play for you, even if they've been with you for a long time.
That's big.
I love that. I think that's huge. I think sometimes we don't necessarily in all of our relationships in life understand that there can be a disconnect in the way that we're trying to communicate and what's coming across. And that stems from body language. And one of the best reads, and it's an easy one, you can go to the website and read all about them, but the 5 love languages I think is super important when we get into this, because all of your players naturally have them. They might not know what they are, and you don't necessarily have to test them on it. But if you're not acclimated with it, basically there's 5 ways that we feel we receive and we give love. And most of the time, we try to give it in the way that we best receive it because it's natural to us. So for me, like my number 1 is words of affirmation. If I come home and my wife is like, hey, you did a great job at work today, like so great to have you home, I feel awesome about life. But my lowest one is acts of service. Like it doesn't mean anything to me. So like when I got married, we struggled for a little bit because I would come home, she'd be making dinner, and she wouldn't come over. My second one's physical touch. She wouldn't come over and give me a hug or like ask how my day was, because her number 1 is acts of service. So she was in there making dinner for me thinking that she was like showing love that way, but I didn't feel that. And then she'd be mad that I didn't like express my appreciation for dinner because I was already upset that she didn't come over. Right. So our players go through the same thing. And I think when you can break it down, the 5, we have physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, gift giving and receiving, and acts of service. You can show all of those to players when you figure out which one they are. Like a physical touch person, that's the person you put your arm around when you're going to talk to them about something bad that they did, right? You're going to just make sure you pat them on the back before that big at bat, show them that you care about them, right? Quality time is the kid that you're going to reach out to and say, hey, let's get together as a team after this and go to B-dubs and just hang out and watch a game. Let's have the team over to my house and watch a game tonight. They'll get more from that, right? Words of affirmation, you're going to build them up. You're going to give them that confidence through your words. Gifts, it's hard to give gifts in baseball, but you have the opportunity every practice to eliminate some of the conditioning or give them an opportunity to do that. Tell them how awesome they were and say, hey, because of that, you don't have to clean up the field. I'm going to drag it today. I'm going to rake, right? So, and then acts of service, that's the kid you reach out to that's going through a slump, and you text them and say, hey, meet me at the cage just 30 minutes before the rest of the team. Let's get some work in, right? Show them your willingness to serve them as a coach, and then they're going to be all in for you. So I think sometimes it's not that you don't care or that we don't care as coaches. It's that the way that we express it isn't necessarily the way that somebody else receives it. So learning how to change the language that you're speaking a little bit to actually fit what the athlete needs is really that next step from going from a good coach with good body language to a great coach who can really differentiate how to deal with individual athletes.
I typed in the 5 love languages on Google right now, and I'm going to read the article right after this is done.
It's fire. I love it.
Dude, hashtag wisdom nugget of the day. You just dropped it in there again, Jake. Dude, you got the tweet already with the vision.
Oh, man.
And
I'm winning the day. Yes.
Winning the day.
This is going to turn into like around the horn. We just got to give somebody the ability to give us points. It'll be great.
He's got the Woody Page in the background, man, with the new quote on the back and the new picture. Who knows?
Woody Page comes on here. I'm leaving.
Let's go. No, I think this is all huge, man. Ron, you got anything to add to that?
No, I think you touched it. I mean, that's the biggest thing is to show them that you care, right? I mean, if they don't know that, then you're not going to get buy-in. That's the easiest thing with the whole thing. Going back to that, right? Buy-in means you care, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we all want affirmation. We're all human beings. We all want some affirmation that we're doing a good job, whether you notice it or not in your team, your sales team, your work, your family, your wife, your kids. We all want to know we're doing a good job. Finding little ways to drop a nugget of awesomeness into their day is something that can literally change the course of their career, change the course of their life, because we don't know where we're getting it from. We don't know where our athletes are getting it from at home, if they are getting it or not, if they're struggling personally or mentally. I'm just having some athletes personally who reach out and they're dealing with relationship things. They're dealing with their own self-doubt and confidence. They don't know how to find gratitude in their life, but on the outside, it looks very joyful. Like the social media looks great. They post great pictures and the filter's amazing. And they have all these followers and they have a cool check mark and there's all these cool things about them that you think on the outside, you're like, wow, this person has it together. But inside, internally, they're struggling. People are struggling. There's a lot of people. Over 75% of the people in the world report some sort of mental illness or health type deal. And I don't even like calling it mental illness or mental health. I just think it's a brain deficiency. We're not taught it from a young age. We're not taught how to handle our emotions. We're not taught love-based leadership tools. We're not taught how to handle our mornings. We're not taught how to practice gratitude or to breathe in stressful situations, but we are taught to sit down, to listen, to follow a blueprint, and then to turn something in to be graded by and be labeled on. And if you've been labeled your whole life, you start to believe some of those labels. I'm a C student. I'm not a very fast athlete. I run a 7.5 instead of a 7.1, and coaches are only looking for 6.8s. I had a dad the other day reach out and say, hey, do you think my son can get to college? He only runs a 7.1. I know coaches are looking for 6.8 and below. Like if they're only looking for 6.8 and below, one, that's rocket speed. Dude, a 6.8 60 is good, by the way. And two, no, does he rake? Does he throw hard? Does he got a good pop time behind the dish? Does he move in the infield? Like, how's his feet? Does he look like an athlete? How does he carry himself? There's a lot more that go into it than the 60 time or the 40 times that you run. But the affirmation, that's the one that sticks out to me big time, is how do we reaffirm our athletes? How do we reaffirm them in times of doubt and a struggle when we're getting crushed 15-0 and got run ruled in a tournament and we're all sad and our parents are sad, or we spent all the money to go to this really cool tournament on the West Coast and it gets canceled, or something happens when we get there and we lose all 4 games and we're one and done in the playoffs. And, you know, what happens, right? What happens then? How do we reaffirm them? It starts with the leadership at the top. And we have a huge opportunity to provide that for our athletes, to reaffirm them daily. And in this time right now, in a time of need, hosting a Zoom call with our athletes is a great way to just keep them engaged. And they want to see each other's faces. they're missing each other. I know they're missing each other, and they don't get to talk all the time. They get to see the social media or Snapchats, but they don't get to talk physically all the time. So when they get in here, even if it's just a team of 10, this means a lot to them. 30 minutes, let's talk it out. Let's have some fun. Let's see what's Johnny doing at home? How's his MLB The Show score? How's my player? How's my Fortnite game? Like, what is my mom cooking today? Just different things that we can get creative with to really spark that interest in our athletes. I think that's a big deal. Does anybody else have anything to kind of close it out here?
No, I think tomorrow we're going to go into the daily success, how to do that. And really what we're looking at on the coaches side is, I think one of the biggest deficiencies in a lot of coaches is after a win or a loss, that next day, whatever it was, sometimes sticks with us. If it was a loss, we show up like we already lost. If it was a win, we show up and we're a little bit more laid back and assuming that we're going to produce the same result. So it changes that dynamic and that culture a little bit. So tomorrow we're going to talk about ways to overcome that, how to stay really focused on the objectives that you have for that day and how to kind of keep that in a way that is actually like numbers based to an extent that can help you lead some of those conversations and some of that focus too. But we are doing with the players a full uni Friday where they're going to come in their full unis. So we'll be at least in jersey tops at that point. So we want to invite you guys to join in. I know as coaches, some of y'all wear uniforms, some of you don't, but a pullover or something, whatever. If you wear like those coaching shorts, like the pinstripe coaching shorts, you're going to have to show those off for us. That'd be awesome. We're going to need those, but I cannot express, I know I can speak for all of us when I say this, but I can't express how grateful we are for this. It's an awesome opportunity to come together and do this. And, this is the highlight of a lot of our days right now with everything else that's going on. So we appreciate you guys being here. It's been really, really cool for us so far, for sure.
Yeah. Last thing that I got is just so you guys know, I mean, we're getting text left and right from players that are talking how valuable they think this is. And for us to be able to touch the lives of some kids during this time is huge. And I think that all of us, especially as coaches, all of us have that same opportunity every single day and every time that we see our players. So, I just want to say how thankful I am that you guys are in here and that we're able to do this, because I'm being confirmed for what I do, right? I'm getting the affirmation that what I'm doing is right, because a lot of these players are taking a lot of this to heart and we're getting somewhere. So definitely super thankful for all you guys, for sure.
And then the last thing I have is just to run right back just a little bit to the self-image thing. We talked about with the players about how their self-image is mostly dependent on what they do and what they think of themselves. But as coaches, please remember that our relationships and the way that we interact with them does take an effect on that and makes that battle sometimes either easier or harder based on those interactions. So if these are impressionable young kids, work on your self-image if you feel like you need it. I know I always need it. Where my friends and I, we always work on it together, and just make sure that we're keeping that mindful, maybe more or so than the wins and losses, but how are these kids being impacted in their self-image? I think that's a big deal. And thanks for doing this.
Yeah, 100%. No, I appreciate it, guys. And this is always awesome to have everybody on here and continue to learn. And the questions are fire on the chat, and even just the different insights of, hey, this is what I do, this is what's worked, this is what we've done in the military, this is what we've done in the fire department. I'm all ears. I'm trying to learn too. I think this is cool just to hear different perspectives and how different things are being applied. So as always, we're always grateful for you guys for even showing up, taking the time out of your day. An hour is a lot of time every day. And to be able to spend it with us has been incredible. And just know that your impact is going a long way. It really is. And maybe that's the affirmation that someone needs in here today, just to reiterate that, whether it's with you and your children, or you and your wife, or you and your family at home, where you're taking care of mom and dad, whatever that may look like in your life right now. You have a big opportunity to provide some love over the next couple weeks. And as always, let's hope that this thing kicks over and we can get back on the field and keep doing what we love.
That's right.
This is a great alternative. So let's keep it rolling. Thank you guys once again. We'll be back here tomorrow, 2 p.m., full unis. Let's do it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Have a good night.